Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm your host, Dr. David Hooper, and today I am so thrilled to announce and introduce my guest, Kieran Leggett. And to say this man has overcome adversity would be an understatement. This man has run multiple businesses, trained international athletes, broken his back and relearned how to walk. This is going to be one heck of an impactful conversation, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the Unstoppable Introvert Project. Kieran, welcome to the show.
Cheers. Thank you, David. Good to be here.
Kieran, just to kick us straight off, before we dive into your background and your experiences and all these amazing things that you've been doing, the first question I always like to ask is all about being unstoppable. So the aim of this podcast is to help introverts become unstoppable. So what does being unstoppable look like to you?
So I think straight away I look at people who I would look up to that are in my eyes unstoppable, and coincidentally introverted as well. So especially people in sports, for me, Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, all well known to be quite introvert. Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, those types, Warren Buffett, of course. So straight away we have those influences, and what I mean influences in the real sense of influences, those people who have truly been unstoppable from unlikely backgrounds, from places where perhaps, like myself, of course, I'm nowhere near at that level of place where they are, but they have had those. They've had those barriers, they've had those knockbacks, they've had those times. So being unstoppable, I look immediately at people like that, and I think, okay, so what do they have? And I'm a nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff. So, I love to research, I love to watch, or love to listen. So I think the things they have in common are clear vision, unshakable determination, regardless of what they come up against, and there's always a dynamic approach to how they overcome obstacles. Obviously, resilience is a massive buzzword, but it's something that certainly does make you unstoppable. But something that I talk about with my team a lot, and literally say it like this: it's the relentlessness of in the pursuit of excellence. So not the pursuit of perfection, that's not what we're looking for here, but relentlessness in the pursuit of excellence, stepping beyond those boundaries of normal, average, all words that I don't like, that have bothered me in the past, and probably because I've been called, oh, you're just a normal guy, you're just an average guy. But not just in sport, or in business as well. These guys are unstoppable, and that's, I aspire to be that unstoppable person, that relentless person, that person that's going to pursue no matter what you throw at me. And as we've mentioned, there's been a couple of things. By no means has there been a straightforward path for me, but yeah, I would say to this day that I could say, yeah, I'm pretty unstoppable. I believe in myself that I am unstoppable.
I love a few of those points, Kieran. I mean, the last one, that self-belief is so important. If more people could just think, I believe in what I'm doing and myself, we'd have a lot more people who are feeling unstoppable. So that last point is really powerful. I love that almost tagline of, I think you said, relentless pursuit of greatness, which
excellence, yeah.
Excellence.
Pursuit.
That could be on a poster somewhere. I absolutely love that. And I really liked your comment around perfection as well. Funnily enough, I was listening to a podcast just this morning that said perfectionism is actually the lowest standard that we can aim for because it's unachievable. It's you will never achieve that. So don't aim for it. So that's got me pumped, to be honest, Kieran. That is awesome. It's so impactful, and I'm sure a few people listening are going, yeah, that might be something I write in my journal or get on the wall there, because yeah, there's some great comments. So just to make this a bit more personal then, Kieran, if this is somebody who's listening, their first interaction with you, can you just give us the cliff notes, the kind of a little bit of an overview of who you are and what you're currently doing? Let's dive into it a bit.
Sure. So, I mean, probably my journey to where I am now, strength conditioning and performance coaching, probably a little bit unconventional compared to some. I came from I was brought up by my dad, so a single dad, in a home where you know, I was 3 years old, brought up by him. I had a stepfather in the army, and so I did a bit of traveling. I was spending my school holidays with, you know, traveling around different countries, Germany, and things that you do as a MOD, as a military kind of brat kind of thing. And see, you know, the influences I was getting from a young age were very male dominant, and discipline was definitely a big one. You know, manners was definitely a big one. Mindset was definitely a big one, and pushing. You know, even just talking to you about this now, I can see how I got to where I am because of, and with in my head, because of the types of experiences I've had. I think the military, you know, being around strong males as a kid certainly had an effect. They're obviously not all positive, but I think in my case there was a lot of positive experience. And look, from that, then I grew up to go through school in my hometown, where I was very much quiet kid. Didn't really step out, didn't have that many, you know, I loved going to play football and do all those things and being a kid, but no one would ever say, oh, you know, there's that Kieran, he does all these, he does all that. I was the quiet kid, and I think for me there was a few other bits of potential, you know, trauma type things that sport got me through, and where I think to myself, if it wasn't for my love of sport, my passion for sport, and literally anything, a bat, a ball, you know, a shuttlecock, whatever it was, I think that was definitely a bit of a refuge for me. Certainly in my younger years, because I just didn't really feel like I fitted into the normal education system. So I always knew that there was something back there that I could lean on, sport, when I needed to. And look, quite frankly, I did poorly at school, not because I was misbehaved, just because I didn't enjoy it. I had all I wanted to do was play sport, as I said, and unfortunately I lost my dad at 16. He committed suicide at 16, and I had a very big decision to make: left or right, up or down. You call it what you want. It was survive or hit rock bottom. So luckily I had an introduction at 16 to an apprenticeship in construction. So I went and I was a carpenter, so I learned all of that. I mean, construction is, at that time, is tough. I could tell you some stories that if you saw it now, the world would say, oh, that's bullying and that's this and that's that. Well, back then it was just a case of chin up and get on with it kind of thing. I won't go into that too much, but essentially I worked my way through the construction industry, started my own business there, and throughout all this time, by the way, continued a love for my sport, continued talking to people, continued learning from people. And again, now talking to you, this just makes my life is making more sense just in this conversation. And I ended up, to cut a long story short, doing my qualifications, getting mentors in the business, speaking to the right people, and understanding that actually construction wasn't for me at all. I was very much finding myself in a more data Excel spreadsheet world of finance and bits that I didn't care about, and I was spending more time detaching myself from that, from the day job, the 9 to 5, and spending more time with my sort of clients on the side. So doing my 9-10 hours in construction, and then going in first thing in the morning, last thing at night, doing 3-4 hours of coaching. And like I say, self-education, mentorship. I put a lot of my skills now down to having quality role models and quality mentors that I've, one, paid for, and two, acquired through friends of friends and that kind of thing. So it's a practical experience, obviously, some great mentors, and here I am now as a coach to performance coach. So I cover the nutritional side. I cover a lot of things from a lifestyle balance side. I cover a lot of things from a mindset perspective. But strength and conditioning is the biggest thing. Injury prevention work or injury reduction, depending on the language that you like to use, and specifics. I work with a lot of runners, and I work with a lot of gymnasts at elite level, and then I have some great other sports that I get into as well. But that's where I am now. Hopefully that gives you a view into kind of where I came from, and a strange little journey, probably.
Superb. And there's so much to unpack there, which is why I was so excited to get you on the show, Kieran. And that journey, even just the very start, from your upbringing in all the different countries, they're really varied experiences. But the one I just want to start by asking about, which obviously was an incredibly difficult time, I'd imagine, was your dad passing. How did you deal with that, and how were you able to continue moving forward around that time?
I think maybe the introvert in me kept me to me, rightly or wrongly. I shared very little with very few. I didn't have a huge circle again, but the ones I did have knew me very well. So they knew what I needed and what I didn't need. And I think, honestly, it was just the brutal truth of, okay, I really do have two choices here. I really do get to make something of this and tell my story, or I do get to hit implode, and I do get self-destruct. Sorry, is what I'm trying to say, and go down a path of, just a path that I wasn't brought up to do. I was brought up well. I was brought up by parents with morals. My dad had morals and manners. That was always very strict in my household. Your pleases, your thank yous. You don't take drugs. You don't smoke. You come back when you're told to come back. Those things. I think that played a big part in me just sort of saying, "Yep, well, that sucked. Chin up, off you go," kind of thing. And my mum was in London, living in London at the time. My sister had moved to America, so it's tough for her too, because bear in mind, she, this had all happened and she's in a completely different country. I did have some family, but not sort of that you would perhaps say, right, okay, I'm going to move to there and live with them. I was, again, maybe because I'm a bit of an introvert, and that I was never overly close with other members. There was one or two that I was very close with, but apart from that, not really. So yeah, just chin up and get on and move on was the attitude, really.
What would your message be to someone who's listening to this, who may have been through a similar experience, and like I say, is listening into this? What would your message be to them?
I think absolutely there are things I could have done better from the start. Talking more, 100%. As easy as, God, we said it all the time, but at 37 now, still dealing with some things that probably should have been dealt with 20 years ago. I would say go, talk to your nearest and dearest about how things have affected you. And I remember I didn't cry for like 5-6 years. Didn't cry at the funeral, didn't cry. I just remember being numb And I think that would have been a lot better having come out earlier. But yeah, I think that's absolutely, I think use it as I would say to somebody, use that energy, that frustration, that all of that energy that comes with it to something towards something positive, rather than bottling it up and making it, such a negative place in your head, in your environment, and letting it get the best of you. I'd say use that to do some good, because I feel that's what I've done. I feel very much at peace with my choices since he passed it. And many people and of his friends have said, he'd be proud, which is, that to me is, woo, big time. So
no, definitely. And I think that message is brilliant. Can you use that pain in a positive way? And I've had people in my circle have not the same situation, because I don't think any situation is exactly the same, but similar. And the ones who have been able to channel that into something positive, whether it's bringing awareness to the topic, or using that pain as fuel to make a positive impact on the world in whatever situation that is, or take those lessons forward, I think it's incredibly impactful. And I'm sure that'll have helped someone today, Kieran. So thank you for sharing. To switch gears then ever so slightly, and want to come onto your spell you had in construction. And I want to really dive into I guess how you found that as an introvert. So kind of before we get into like your business ventures, just working in that environment, and I'm generalizing, but I've got family members who work in that kind of industry. It's quite loud, it's quite aggressive, it's full on at times. And for an introvert, sometimes those situations can be quite challenging. So I was really interested to hear how did you find all that, going into that? Because was that straight from school?
Yeah, 16, left no A levels or anything like that, just very poor grades, straight into a carpentry apprenticeship. Now, very brash world, male dominated, aggressive, abrupt. There were some lovely guys, by the way, but in a way, it's a get in, get your head down, don't make a noise kind of thing. So actually, when you look at it, that can suit an introvert to a degree, depending where you want to take it, obviously. But it very much, I didn't want to get involved with the big guy, the ground workers that were throwing the other apprentices in the cement mixers and the God knows what. So guess what? I stuck close to the few that I knew and trusted. I kept myself to myself. If somebody said, just do you mind just doing that? Absolutely. I just, I listened. I just got on with what I needed to do, and I tried not to put myself in the places that were going to get me a lot of attention, and negative attention. Although, let's be honest, at the time, as a 16-year-old, you're still a bit gobby, and there were times, of course, when I perhaps pushed the line a bit. But generally, I would say my time as an apprentice was fantastic. I learned a lot of lessons. I watched a lot. I listened a lot, and I wouldn't change that part of my life for a minute. And I think at the end of the day, you have the opportunity to take yourself away in any, as an adult, an apprentice, or whatever you are, in any situation. If you feel you are an introvert and you don't like an environment, go back, get out of there, go to your comfort zone, take some time to yourself, remove the stuff. I was always quite good at that, I think. And at the time, not that I ever thought, oh, I'm an introvert, I need to go and do these things. It was just, right, okay, I don't like that, I'm going this way.
I can imagine I would be very similar, kind of fall into line, head down. I don't want to be chucked in anywhere. Yeah. So I can picture that. And Kieran, my father-in-law has his own business in that industry, and so talented in terms of what he can do. He can chuck buildings up, he can make furniture, he can plumb, he can really he's an artist, really. And I think one of the biggest disappointments is my lack of ability in that industry. And my first gym, so I opened a gym in 2019, and as part of that, he helped build kind of like the insides of it a little bit.
Cool.
And there's this funny story where I was helping, Laura and I had been married, I think 3 years. So I was still, trying to be the best son-in-law I could be. And I was, really high energy, trying to help out. And I was sanding this wall with an electric sander. And I was sanding away, must have been sanding for about 45 minutes. And he came over and he's rubbing the wall, and he goes, "It doesn't seem very flat, like, it doesn't feel very good, this. Have you, like, what you've been doing?" So I passed him the sander and I hadn't attached like the sandpaper. And I think that was like, right, I'll go stand in the corner with my dunce's hat on.
I mean, honestly, again, I'll say this again, I wouldn't change that for the world, that experience. And we live in that. I bought a renovation project with my wife now, so I'm doing the work for that. I'm still passionate about it. I'm not passionate about doing it for other people. So I'm still passionate about the skills. I'm still passionate about building something and looking back and enjoying it. And I just don't want to do it for other people anymore. Or quite frankly, I don't want to have a boss who tells me where I need to be or where I need to, what I need to do on a set day is quite a bit of it as well. But honestly, I'm grateful for, here's what happened. My dad made the introduction before he passed to the guy who owned the business and said, my son wants to be a plumber. And I had sent out letters to 20, 30 local, wants to be a plumber. And the guy, I was in school holidays, and the guy said, his name was Richard, he's passed, unfortunately he committed suicide as well. He turned around and he said to me, how about carpentry? I went, all right, carpentry then. I had no idea. I was 16 years old. I didn't know what I wanted to do. He said, right, couple of weeks, have your school holidays, and then off you go. We'll get you stuck in. So I thought, literally within 30 seconds, I'd gone from wanting to be a plumber to a carpenter. But neither really made sense to me at the time. It was just a fantastic opportunity. And look, I would say that in terms of life decisions, was one of those that also helped for what was about to come, helped steer me in the right direction. Without that, again, I'd hope that I would have made great decisions, but that was some structure. And financially, at that time, then I was 16, starting to earn a little bit of money. I think it wasn't even £100 a week, it's something like £70 a week. I was able to then suddenly have more money than my friends who were still at school and all that. So yeah, that definitely steered my early years.
Some great experiences. And then, is that the point where you then worked in that industry for a little bit and started your first business in construction? And what did that look like?
That's correct. Yeah. So started that. So went through my qualification period as a carpenter, all that stuff. Actually, there's a little gap here. I took a year out when I was early 20s. I went to Australia, broke my neck, shit hit the fan. So all of a sudden I was quadriplegic, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't use my arms and legs, and the recovery period, they were saying 6 months to a year. So when you go home, you can forget your carpentry. You're not going to be doing that. So it was like, okay, because that's all I knew at the time. So I had a choice. I went back, I got some bar work, and there was sort of straining on my neck, especially. And in the meantime, I messaged every single person that I'd ever come in contact with from a carpentry building perspective and said, in 2 months' time, I'm going to be starting my own business. How do you feel about me coming to do some work? And I literally messaged everybody. And it started with a couple of no's, not yet, but actually an astounding amount of, sure, we need a door done. We need this done. And we're talking small fry. So yeah, I started hanging a couple of doors for people, which in the building world is, is a classic entry into your own business. I'm early 20s, I think I was 23, 24 at this point, and just started my own first business. Who even knows at that age what you're doing? So I ran with it. I just ran with it.
And before we dive into that process, because I've got a lot of questions around how you did that, I've got to check back on the throwaway line you gave us there when you broke your neck and you did this. What happened? Was it in Australia, you said, and you'd gone over to Australia and you actually broke your neck?
Yeah, so I actually made the papers over there too. Look, super freak accident. I was on, for anyone that's travelled in Australia here, I had gone to Fraser Island, which is well known for having fresh water and all that stuff, rivers and lakes and bits on. 2-3 day trip. We were me and a couple of the guys. We'd got a big Land Rover, big Toyota Cruiser. We were on there. We were throwing a rugby ball around, and one of the guys had kicked it a long way. I had looked at my Canadian mate, who's now my best friend, and we were running through this really shallow river towards this rugby ball. I went to grab it, and the water was getting deeper and deeper. So it started at my feet, and then my knees, and then a bit higher. So as I dived to grab it, I hadn't realised that the tide in this little river bit had come up, and it had built a sandbank. A sandbank is, literally just a mound of block solid sand in the middle of this stream, and just a couple of degree angle that I'd obviously gone in, and I'm not saying I'm fast by any means, but with the pace I was running, I'm no Olympic Christie. I might need to update my references there, but the pace I was running just meant that I hit my forehead, which might explain why it's that big as well, and then my chin tucked real quickly, and I remember hearing that pop. Not sure what that was. As long as I got to the rugby ball first, who cares, right? And then I was drowning, and then things went very dark very quick. Luckily, I'd spent what seemed like a lifetime with Alex, my friend at this time, which was only about 3 or 4 weeks. He'd got to know me very well, and he thought I was messing around in the river as I was floating and looking up at him and blah, 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 gargling in the water. Luckily, he said he saw the whites of my eyes, and he knew something wasn't quite right. So he dragged me up onto the bank, and he was talking to me, saying, "Hey man, what's up? What are you up to?" So I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what's happening. But, fully compass mentis, fully. But I was saying to him, something just feels weird, and he was like, "Okay, cool. Well, just let's go. We're going." And I said, "All right, okay." He said, "Well, come on then." And I said, "I am." And he said, "You're not." He said, "I put my left leg up now." He said, "You're not." I said, "What about this?" He's like, "Nothing's happening. What are you doing?" And then it dawned on me that things perhaps weren't quite where they should have been. So yeah, I was quadriplegic from that point. Got a chopper off because it's had to get sat phone, so it's all pretty big deal. Got my first proper helicopter ride, which was pretty cool, I suppose. Back to the main island, and where they decided that I've got a separate funny story that I'll tell you off this, but basically they had to fly me to Brisbane because that's where the specialist was. Turns out I'd absolutely obliterated my C5. For anyone that doesn't know your C5, it's the top part of your vertebrae. It's right about just on top of your shoulders, basically, between your bottom of your ears and top of your shoulders. So yeah, that was they say C5 keeps the diaphragm alive. I was 3 millimeters from severing my spinal cord, I was told. So 3 millimeters is about 2 cigarette papers, 3 cigarette papers, something like that. So yeah, I've flown private plane to doctor's plane, another crazy experience, to Brisbane, to the specialist. I was mad because I'd just come from Brisbane. It was cold up there. I remember thinking in my head, because none of this seemed real at the time, I was a bit drugged up too. They gave me some real great drugs, and I remember saying to them, "Brisbane? Why are you taking me to Brisbane?" can't you take me south? Sorry, can't you take me north? And they're like, I don't think you understand how serious this is. Anyway, so I spend the next, what was I, good few weeks anyway, in Brisbane in an amazing hospital, and they rehabilitated me. I learned to walk again. By the way, they did surgery straight away. They took bone off my hip, cut it off my hip, put it in my neck, screwed it all together, bish bash bosh, get out of here, you English lad. Yeah, and then had to walk again. Had to learn to walk again. So that recovery. Do you know the worst thing about that? Honestly, I remember thinking, and I've heard this a bit about people who have had some bad experiences. I really wanted my mum. I went back to such a childlike requirement. I just remember being helpless in that bed, no arms, no legs, not knowing if I believed I was always going to walk again, but deep down, you're not able to walk. So is it going to be a week, a year, a month, 6 months? Who knows? So I was like, man, I need my mum. And she was living in America. Yeah. So I mean, I was getting pneumonia in the hospital because you laid there. For anyone who knows, who's ever been in the hospital for any amount of time, if you're laid there, that's the worst thing for you, because the fluid sits in your lungs. You're getting no fresh air, nothing's moving, no muscular movement. So that was a real danger. And anyway, I've gone on a massive tangent here, but my mum flew in. I always joke with her because she got first class flights because my stepdad was working for an airline company. So I'm like, Mum, whatever, you just came first class flights to Australia. And do you know what? The British government have a deal with the Australian government, and essentially the whole thing was covered. I had excellent travel insurance, right? But there were some things that weren't covered on that, and my insurance picked up the rest. But the Aussie and British government just cover everything else, repatriation, all that kind of stuff. So sorry, massive side tangent there. By the way, I probably shouldn't say this, but whatever. I told my insurance company I've got nothing at home, which wasn't far off the truth, to be honest. I bought a house, but it was rented out. I wasn't going to live with family, and I said I've got nothing, so I need to be repatriated to the US, where my mum and sister are. And then I had 2 months in the US of there's pictures of me with my neck brace on, but just living the life. By that time, I'd started walking again, and I was so grateful of being able to walk again, that I vowed right there and then that, because they live in the mountains, I said, where a lot of people might turn around and say, oh, I'm going to really slow down and do all this. I was like, no, screw that. I now want to do more than I've ever done. I'm climbing mountains. I'm cycling from one end to the other. I'm going to help more people than I ever have done before. I want to use what I've got because I've not had it, and I know what it's like not to have it. So screw that. I'm putting my body through it. I'm, like a treat. I think of these things as a treat. I'm treating my body to its full potential. I run multiple marathons now, and I think my body is capable of this. My body wants to be used like a Ferrari. Don't use it as a Mini Cooper or a Rover Metro. I want it to be, no offense to those I want it to be used as a Ferrari, so screw it, let's do it.
Oh wow, that is a mind-blowing story, Kieran. Hearing that is just gobsmacking. I probably had my mouth open quite a bit during that story. And the whole thing, from the freak accident to the helicopter ride to being in the hospital and going through the surgery and things, that's just such a huge thing to go through. And I love, again, similar to the previous stories that you've told, it's all about how you then have used that trauma in a positive way, which is absolutely superb. And you mentioned you had a funny story to mention after it, so I won't ask any more questions. What was the funny story?
Okay, so when I first broke my neck, I got flown to the mainland, right, in Hervey Bay, it's called. It's where you fly. That's where you jet off. Anyway, there's a small hospital there, and basically the doctors were assessing me, and there was 3 or 4 around. Yes, I could hear them all talking or whatever. One came round, and I couldn't really see him because he was off to the side. My legs were up, and at this time I realised I got no boxes or anything on, right? So I'm absolutely whatever, everything's out. And he says to me, he says, right, this is just a test. Just need to see if your things are working okay. And I don't know what he's on about. All of a sudden, I feel something around the old butthole, and now there ain't nothing going up there. So he's prodding, and I'm just like this, and he's prodding and prodding. And I said to him, mate, you're gonna have to stop that because I'll kick you. He said, he turned around, classic Aussie, he goes, well, you won't do that, mate, because at the time I couldn't move my legs. So he said, I'm gonna have to try once more. And I was like, because obviously when your spinal cord's damaged, your nerve and all that. So he tries again. He tells me, I'm going to try once more. I said, well, you can try all you want, but you ain't getting in. So I nipped up again, and he looked at me, he goes, fair play, I'm not getting in there. Well, we always joke now and say that he wasn't even a doctor. He's just a fella doing the rounds.
Yeah. Oh, superb.
He was just doing the rounds whilst the doctors were doing there. Yeah. He was a visitor. Oh dear.
Oh,
so,
that is excellent.
So yeah, that was a funny additional story that but yeah, feel free to tell if you want, but if it's in there, it's in there. I'm not shy about it. It's something that happened. I think hilarious part of the story.
Definitely. I mean, we've got the podcast title, Kieran, so that's good. We don't need to worry about that.
A random bloke tried to finger my butthole.
That's right. Yeah. That'll get the viewers. Yeah.
But honestly, from the minute I did it to the minute I kind of walked strangely out of the hospital in Brisbane, I said, no, I'm not walking again. I'm not playing sport again, and this isn't gonna be it for me. So whilst I was frightened about being in a wheelchair, I just didn't believe that was the life for me. That was just not going to happen. I was not going to allow that to happen. He told me, the neurologist was like, you're about 1 in 10,000 or something, because if you do make a full recovery, that's not supposed to happen to people that do what you just did. And do you know what? I was pissed too, because I was young, I was fit and healthy. These are the things that I think helped get me through, right? I was fit and healthy. I'd worked really hard to get myself in great shape, but in a healthy way. I was supposed to be traveling to a few more countries, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, with my friend Alex, who had incidentally saved my life. And they told me I couldn't go. I said, you cannot, if you tell us you're going, we're not signing you out of this hospital, and you are staying here for the next X amount of months. So my mum had to talk sense into me and tell me that, no, you ain't. Because I had a big backpack, so it would have been motorcycles, a big Bergen on my back, and that was dumb. Looking back, yeah, that was dumb. That would have been a silly thing. Anyway, so yeah, they said the only way we'll let you fly and sign you off to leave Australia is if you have to agree that you don't go anywhere else after this. And I was like, do you know what? I think I could do that. I think that's what I need to do. I think I need to not be a knob here. I think I need to go recover. So yeah, I've got my hip bone in my neck. Cool little side story on that too, right? So I worked the Olympics. So after I got back to England, a few months after I'd been in US on R&R, and I decided to work the Olympics. So I was like, well, I can't do anything, so I'm supposed to be doing other jobs. So signed up to work at the Olympics, got a really good little number at the Olympics because I was a little bit older. I had experience managing people from my building stuff, and got a great job. Worked the Olympics, ended up bumping into some of the Canadian athletes, met loads of athletes there, by the way. And again, this all pieces together for my passion for what I do now. And the Canadian guy I was telling him about, I said, oh, my best mate's a Canadian. He just saved my life like 3-4 months ago. And this guy, Canadian sprinter, said, go down there and see my physiotherapist, and she'll take great care of you. So I was looking around like, where's the gaffer? Left my security job. I was like, screw this, I'm not turning that up. So I just walked right into Athletes Village. I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity. So I ended up spending a few hours with the Canadian sprinter's personal physio. She was grabbing my neck. She's like, "Oh yeah, I can feel the plate." I was like, you know, she was like, "Yeah, I feel it. I'm going to do this for you. We can do this." And it was amazing. That in itself was worth the experience. You know, breaking my neck, I'd do that. I got to spend a couple of hours with an absolute world-class physiotherapist. So hell yeah.
That is quite the story as well. That is just to get that insight is so cool. And I do want to get to where you are now, but no, not at all. The stories are so interesting. And before we do that, tell me about that process then of the actual recovery. So I think a lot of people here who will be listening will have their own broken neck, as in their own challenge in front of them, where there isn't too many bigger challenges than learning to walk again and, you know, doing what you've then gone on to do. And some of the people listening will be facing something, whether it's, you know, their business is crashing around them, maybe their marriage is falling apart, maybe they're just so lost in life they don't know what the next step is. So what can you tell them that they could then maybe go and apply to their own lives? But please tell us about that process of recovery as well.
The process of recovery mentally was probably the biggest thing here. And again, to really simplify this was just about belief, and believing that I wasn't going to just be an injured guy who couldn't do things anymore. And I think I genuinely believe that got me a long way. But of course, the things that I also had to think about or wanted to visualize and reflect on was, I reflected on what have I done in the past, that, you know, what have I learned, all those things, not just about the accident, but about life, about my journey so far. What can I bring forward? And then what do I want to expand on? Are the things I want? And then honestly, that just snowballed my passion for getting out of my place where I was in terms of physically, to take me now to be able to, you know, pass all the experiences on to these athletes. Now I love telling athletes when they say, "Oh, you know, I've really hurt my ankle." Hey, you want to hear about recovery? I'm not going to tell you, but let's you know, so I get the chance to perspective. I think perspective is probably the big word. I had a big pill of perspective myself, and then and again realized that I'm the one that's going to believe in myself more than anyone. I'm the only one that can make the decisions about how I then choose to live the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And whether it's in sport, business, life, relationship, whatever it is, I think you can take those words and that perspective, and, you know, deep down, if you're a good person, you're trying to make the best decisions you can for you at that time. There's so much you can do, and then inevitably, hey, also sometimes things go to shit, and that's also okay, because something that we really coach and something that personally, again, I'm really open to discussing with my athletes is failure is not it's not something you should be afraid of. Failure really is, man, I've been low and thought, is this failure? Is this? But there's guess what? There's a way out. There's a positive way out. There's a better way out. And at that moment, where we feel those really shitty times when we're down and feeling, man, we're low, and there's that belief again, and there's that opportunity to learn again. You know, if you make a mistake, guess what? You can make it again, or you can learn and not do it again. So I guess I pulled back to the 16-year-old me, where it was like, whilst that wasn't a failure of me, that was in my life a failing of my life. And what do I want to do here? Yeah, I think there's perspective, reflection, and definitely positive adaptation. Something that we bang on about is practice, failure, reflect, repeat, practice, failure, reflect, repeat, practice, failure. And if you can do that, and then I think you're golden.
I love that process, and I love your perspective on failure. And how did you get to that point? Because I think there's probably a few people who it's an introvert thing. It might be a little bit, but when there is a big setback, it's kind of like there's an extra layer on when it's an introverted person. So let's say, certainly in my career, if I gave a talk and it went terribly, it was like, right, not again. Like, I've done it once, I failed. Nah, like, I'm going in a different direction, or, that type of thing. So how did you get to that point of looking at failure, of actually, this is just a stepping stone on the journey. It's not the end of the journey.
You are 100% right in that, that introverted perspective of, I'm just getting myself out of that situation, where actually, not all the time, but there are times when you want to be able to face up to that. And honestly, I've probably just failed so many times at things that, I had no choice. I failed a lot at things that, with the business we spoke about, that failed. The carpentry business, that failed. That went big, boom, it went bang. Went big, went bang. Other things I've done failed. So I really just think I had to embrace that. But I also had to be smart about removing myself from things that I knew were self-destructive, or I knew weren't for me. So there's an element of that, but you never get all those right either. I really just think test and test again. I've been in place, I deliver a lot of talks and workshops like you do now as well. And there are some that I think that was, yes, smash that one. And there are others on the same subject that a week later that I might go, a complete different set of people that I think, oh my God, swallow me up. That was the worst thing I've ever done in my life, and never doing that again. Hey, we come back to that practice, reflect, repeat. It is a learned behavior for sure. It is a learned behavior, because I think that inherently isn't where I am most comfortable, or it isn't where I was perhaps most comfortable. And I think there are elements of me that are perhaps not entirely introverted. There are certainly elements of myself where I get my energy, where I think that's a learned behavior, but I think that's introverts anyway. I don't think that is all for me. It's not nurture and nature. It's a bit of both. You've got that. So as you know, David, and my wife talked to me a bit about this, the whole labeling, the whole introvert extrovert thing. Yes, it's a bit of a label, and I think it's important for people to know, and this is something I picked up on quite recently, is that it's not a characteristic, not born like that, and it's not something that you can't, make improvements in certain areas if that's what you want to do. It's a place where you get your energy. So if you decide that, hey, I know inherently that I need some time by myself, and I only need 3 or 4 or 5 friends, fantastic. That's cool. That's great. You can still be a leader. You can still be unstoppable. You can still be whatever. And more times than not, you are going to be probably in a better position than the extrovert. But again, it's not a characteristic, and I think people on both sides can understand that just where I get my energy. It's just what I need to do, for me. So again, another tangent, David. Another tangent.
No, very, very cool. Really cool insights. And I'm aware of the time ticking away, and I want to be respectful of your time, Kieran, but I'm really, really keen to talk to you then about where you're at now. So we did the construction, and it didn't work out. And what was your next steps then into kind of the fitness industry and starting your own business? Was that a couple of years later? Like, what was the timeline there?
So big crossover. So I was doing all of my research, CPD, qualifications, all of that stuff whilst I was still in construction. So I was, my dad was in the fitness industry anyway. So I was already, I was wired that way, plus all these things that happened to me along the way. I was just wired. It was inevitable. It wasn't a matter of if, it was when. When am I going to grab by the balls and go for it, and just make that switch? So So the full-time switch actually came right before COVID, and that was when I was like, you know what, it just is what it is, and we need to just go and press the button. But I had done a lot of work in the background, again, doing what I did at 16, calling up the people, as comfortable as it is, calling the people that I had on my phone saying, do you want this job? Do you want that job? I was also then messaging at this point, we're a few years on, messaging people and just being like, hey, I know we'd spoken about, I've been helping people with some nutritional advice, with some running advice, with exercise advice, really basic stuff, but I knew my stuff. So people were coming to me automatically. So all I needed to do was transfer that. Instead of 15% or 20% of my energy, all of a sudden it became 100% of my energy goes there. So I made that switch. But again, I had built those foundations. So I had some great mentors early on that put me in places where, honestly, I couldn't have wished to have been in 20 years. If you'd have said to me, you're going to be coaching people at, elite Great British level, Olympic hopefuls, for this year, in the next 5 years, for example, I'd have said, okay, I'm down, let's go. Okay, sure, not sure how, but let's do it. I believe, and again, that belief in my ability and just took off. And I knew I could do it, and I knew I've got people's best interest at heart. I know I've got value in what I've learned and what I'm continuing to learn. I know people want to hear what I've got to say, so I knew there was value there, which meant really I just needed to step out of a few comfort zones and show people who I am, what I am, and here we are. In tomorrow I'm going to go spend a day with the GB hockey squad down at Bisham Abbey, just the day with the S&C coaches and just
casual, yeah, nice.
sometimes I still think, oh my god, what am I going to fuck it up? What am I going to say?
I love that. Yeah, Kieran, I mean that. Yeah, it sounds incredible. It sounds incredible because it's different. A lot of coaches or personal trainers, I guess, work with the general public and work in gyms and all these different things. But with respect, working with elite athletes is different. It's a different challenge. It's a different kind of genre, if you like, different demographic. And there's a lot of eyes on you, and there's a lot of pressure for you to deliver. And I guess it's how, as an introvert, do you prepare for that environment? Because kind of like that attention, I guess, where there's a governing body watching what you're doing. How do you approach that in terms of making sure you're feeling confident and feeling that you're, in a position where you can go and coach effectively?
I love that question. I think the best way for me to answer that is to say, I believe so much in what I do, and that I never put myself before the athlete or before the person that I'm trying to give a service to, or that I am giving, that I will never do anything or say anything that I haven't learned, experienced, or been on the receiving hand of in some way, shape, or form. So I think first things first, it is that belief that I think allows me to, again, almost park the introvert side of me, because I genuinely believe that hard. Secondly, I'm not. This is huge too. I'm not afraid to say, "Oh, I don't know that," or if somebody asks the questions, let me get back to you on that one. And I think that, as a skill, also has allowed me to then not feel the pressure, because if somebody does ask me a question I don't know, because I'm not suddenly scrambling in my airhead here of cobwebs, looking for an answer desperately that I might have seen on Google 10 years ago, and I'm straight up and saying, yep, good question, don't know that one, I'll come back to you. Most people are like, oh God, and guess what? That releases my anxiety completely. So I get, I almost remove that anxiety just by having that answer. You know what? The last thing I'll say on that as well, in that environment, and I love the elite world environment, but you would be surprised, well, you may not, but some of the listeners might be surprised how many introverts are in that, in especially the sports that I coach in. So maybe that's why I'm drawn to certain athletes, to certain sports. Who knows? That's human psychology. But running, David, is running a team sport?
No, not normally.
Gymnastics a team?
No, sure.
Generally, no. Sure. Speedway, motorcycle, is that a team sport?
No, yeah.
Tennis, is that a
yeah.
do you see where I'm going with this? So what I found was, and again, this is quite a new revelation for me, and something that I've talked openly with my partner, is that I think what helps me here is that the people I'm trying to help, I can relate and resonate so much with, and perhaps vice versa. Hopefully, we always have a very good working relationship, that I can talk to them on a level that they get, rather than me being, with the greatest respect, because you've been in football, but right then, lads, all this guy, we're gonna do that, we're gonna shouting about and being that, that puts me in a different place. Would I feel necessarily uncomfortable in a football environment? Really, but I'd probably feel like that school environment again, where I need to be in a smaller school. I'd need to be a little bit away from the big boys hustling and bustling. Does that make sense?
It definitely does. It's really interesting about the sports that you've kind of gravitated towards. That is really, really interesting, and the types of people perhaps who are involved in those. And I think that as long as you're able to coach and to contribute into all those different things, it's that's brilliant. My last question, when it comes to the business, I guess, and entrepreneurship, and again, I do generalize when I ask these questions, for those people who are introverted and maybe lack confidence and are concerned about their introverted nature when it comes to actually building a business, what would your advice be to those people? And you've built a couple of businesses. You work with a lot of different clients and you have worked in different industries and all these different experiences. So you're really well placed to advise those people who are maybe in their 9-to-5 job and they're thinking, I want to escape this. I don't want to have a boss, like you mentioned yourself. What would your advice be to those people when it comes to actually taking that step and building a business?
I think firstly, you got to, as I said earlier on, it's certainly a misconception that an introvert isn't necessarily a good leader, a good communicator, or good at certain things like that. You've got to think about the skills that you are good at and the things that you do enjoy, and really showcase those particular skills, rather than trying to fit again into an industry or a box in an industry that doesn't suit you. In the fitness industry, you can be there are 1,000 things you can do, but the classic one is a gym floor personal trainer, right? So you spend, let's say, 12 hours a day on the gym floor, talking to people, coaching face to face. Everything is very energy sapping, very consuming, very claustrophobic if you're very introvert. So I think understanding that, there are tons of platforms now that I can do what I love and I'm passionate about without actually having to have too much contact with people, or without having to be in a building or park my car or whatever it is in a place that makes me feel uncomfortable, or it takes me to a place where I don't want to be and I end up feeling like I'm in a job again. So my advice would be, just explore your own skill sets, explore the things that you know that you can do well. Generally, that's going to be things like problem solving, right? Strategic thinking, stuff like that. You're going to be perhaps those types of skills that you have there. You might be a bit more techie. We have a lot of introverts that are a bit more techie. So explore those avenues and look within the industry as to what the options are. And if you love the industry, whatever you're going to go into that much, and you believe in your value that much, then doesn't mean you can't carve out something completely separate. whatever it is. But if there are people that can see the value in what you give and you see the value in what you give, hey, look, let's be honest here. There are people that sell farts in jars. And that's what I always think. I always go back to this. Whenever I've had a tough day, I've been on a call with a potential client, they haven't signed up, or I feel like I've let someone down, or I feel like I've let myself down. I had a tough day. My thoughts are this: people sell farts in jars for a lot of money. Chin up, you'll be just fine, you know? So I would say the worst thing you can do is not do. The worst thing you can do is just not do anything.
I love that, Kieran. And I think that's another great option for the title of this podcast, possibly.
People sell farts in jars. Hey, this
is
just another day in my head, David. You've plugged into I haven't even had that much coffee today.
I'm enjoying it. No, it's great. Well, I really want to be respectful of your time, Kieran, because you've given us so much today. But I guess the last question I want to ask you is, what's next for you? What's on the horizons for you and your company and maybe the rest of 2024 and beyond?
Yeah, so the way I'm looking, so I like to work with a small amount of elite athletes. They really inspire me. So I find that personally inspiring and helps me grow my business. So I'm going to continue working with a select few elite athletes. I'm going to continue working in the community, delivering workshops, seminars, and delivering my experiences, my value to youth, to adults, to different sectors of the community. I really want to push my messages far and wide. I really want to be able, on a larger scale, which is going to push me in some zones of discomfort. But again, I'm going to embrace that. And honestly, for Viking Vitality, I'd like to be able to travel a little bit more with my family and honestly have a little bit more perhaps time freedom, where I can choose a little bit more about how I live my day. Honestly, I'm so passionate about this business. I'm so open to where it might go that I really don't want to constrain it at all. I really don't want. It's a good question, but I don't want to have to tell you an answer, because I'm open to it going in whatever that's my life. My life goes in these directions, and yeah, that's the way I like it.
It's exciting. It's really exciting, and I'm intrigued to see what is next for you and all the things you're doing. And last little bit, where can people find out more about you? What are your kind of platforms and handles and those sorts of things?
Yeah, sure. So Instagram, I am Viking Vitality Fitness. And for me personally, I'm Kieran Performance Coach, Kieran_performance_coach. That's my Instagram. I am on TikTok as well. That's a bit of a different one, as Viking Vitality. I'm also, if you're a more business approach, so I do deliver to businesses. I'm on LinkedIn as well, under Kieran Leggett, Elite Performance Coach. So there's a few ways you can get me there, and look out for the YouTube, because that's going to be coming soon too.
Superb. Well, Kieran, thank you so much for your time today. It's been emotional. It's been a laugh. It's been informative. It's been everything. It's been everything that I could have asked for, and we really do appreciate your time. I think a lot of people are going to really take some real value from this conversation. And to everybody listening, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to subscribe to the podcast. Find us on YouTube as well. And remember that being an introvert isn't the thing that will hold you back. It is the thing that will help you become great. So until next time, stay unstoppable.